All right, hello everybody. I believe we are live, and welcome to Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel. I'm your host, Marshall. I've got my coffee going. It is morning here on the Pacific Coast, the edge of Western civilization, and I am I'm a little stuffy. My son, I think, brought a cold home from school and has shared it lovingly with all of us. Nonetheless, I am here. You are looking at a map of our Red versus Blue campaign, or the fictional continent on which we play that. I'm going to turn my face off so that you can see the whole map, and we're going to talk about this briefly. But before we get into Red versus Blue and some of the cool things that we are doing in that game, I would like to share with you another thing we have coming up, which is our Halloween event. On Halloween, we kind of always do something a little fun, and here it is, folks. October 29th, it won't be Halloween exactly, it'll be October 29th, but on October 29th, we have the 60th anniversary of the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis. Look, we got all of our airplanes in the pictures around here. It's pretty cool. And as a result, we are doing a Cuban Missile Crisis game. The event has the United States versus the Soviet Union and the Cubans, as the Soviets are trying to situate missile silos on Cuba to pose a direct and immediate threat to Washington, D.C., in the southeastern United States. The United States team has to figure out, how do we stop this from happening? Is it going to be a convoy of Soviet ships on its way in? Do we blockade Cuba? Do the Soviets try to outmaneuver the blockade? Do they try to force their way through? What do they do? Do they negotiate a deal or something? But alas, the players will not be able to talk. The two teams will not be able to talk to each other for the first couple turns of the game. However, after that, yes, negotiations may become possible. The other thing that's going to be different, and because it's kind of our fun Halloween game, is we're going to be playing it kind of what I call party line style, meaning that all the players on each team are probably going to be in one big room. The players will still have units that are under their individual control. They will still be responsible for giving their own orders, so units are not going to be commanded by committee. They'll be commanded by a specific player who will say, I want my unit to go here. But it'll just play more like a traditional in-person Kriegsspiel where everybody's sitting around a table and the players can hear each other give their orders. And the justification for this is twofold. First of all, at this time in history, you have modern communications. Second of all, several of these players would either be together at the White House or the Pentagon or the Kremlin or whatever it may be. They would probably be in physical close proximity to each other. Third, they'd be able to pick up the phone and call each other and have a conference. The turns in the game will be 8 hours in increments, which means there's ample opportunity for the president to pick up the phone and call General so-and-so, and then pick up another phone and call the other general and say, let's do this, or Admiral so-and-so, and so on. So that's a big part of the reason for it. Plus, it keeps the game a little bit more manageable. It should be easier and faster to run and process the turns if we do it that way. I keep thinking there was one other reason, but I've lost track of it now in my list of other good reasons why it's okay, I think, to play that way. The game is going to be heavier on role play, though, rather than traditional Kriegsspiel. The units, and I'll give you a quick peek at some of the units, are really more abstractions than anything else. And this should not be taken as a precise order of battle. I've actually instructed the person creating the module to put more or less or whatever on the map so that when players see the module, they really still aren't guaranteed to have a good sense of what the other team is going to have to play with. It is, however, a very beautiful module. We will be adding or subtracting pieces according to what what we want to do as far as the specific details in this scenario. Those specific details will be established soon. I think we'll probably even have the players establish a number of those specific details, but some details will come from the umpires. Anyway, the idea is to kind of have fun. It's a fun game. It's a different experience. It will be more of a role play experience rather than a traditional Kriegsspiel. We will move players out on their own under certain circumstances. So, whoever is playing President Kennedy has always talked about um, how he wants to campaign and possibly remove himself from the game, if you will, for a turn at a time to simulate, well, I'm out on the campaign trail, I'm running for president. I've got to go campaign, which means I can't be around to manage the crisis here and there. And the players, the Secretary of Defense, and whoever else, they have to kind of manage things in my absence. I think that's a really cool way to play, really interesting. Might not be as fun for the President Kennedy player, but it might also create some really cool dilemmas for the United States team. We'll see how that goes, we'll see how that lasts, and so on. The big deal is they have to work all of this out, one way or other, without going to a full-blown nuclear war. If they go into a nuclear war, both sides just lose, right? You blew up the Earth. You don't want to blow up the Earth. That's where I keep all my stuff, right? Don't do that. But there we have it. So let's take a look at some comments. Achilles says, good morning. Good to see you, Achilles. Lawson is also saying, what's up? Hello, Lawson. Good to see you here. Otto says, hopefully not all of the players will be hardliners, so the game or world doesn't end in the first turn. That's right. If both sides just say nuke 'em, nuke 'em, nuke 'em, right? We can probably restrict that as umpires and say, well, we're not at DEF CON 1 or 2 or whatever. We've got to there's a whole procedure. Historically, militaries, even in the Cuban Missile Crisis, were not on a hair trigger at all times. Um, I do know, like, Strategic Command had like a 5 or an 8 minute notice. They had to be able to get the bombers in the air like within 8 minutes or something like that, whatever it was. And so there was a small force that was like that. I know that our nuclear forces, the missiles can be launched from the silos pretty quick because you figure it's 30-minute flight time over the pole for a nuke missile, and it's going to take a few minutes to detect and verify that yes, we have inbounds, and then the president has to be notified. President has to make a decision. Then the decision has to filter through the chain of command. Then there's a process to launch the missiles and get them out of the stable and get them into the air. That takes time. And so, aside from that, your regular forces, your conventional forces, which might be armed with tactical nuclear weapons, those are not on that hair trigger setting. Most of your forces are going to take time to work up. Like, okay, even today, if World War III were to break out, and the president were to say down in San Diego, get those aircraft carriers out of the bay and get that aircraft carrier, whichever one might be there at the time, get it out to sea and deploy. They can do that within minutes. It does take time. I think the sailors have a couple hours uh, maximum in which they've got to get back to the ship or whatever. I think that's the rule I've heard somewhere. I could be wrong. Someone with Navy experience can correct me. But I do believe those ships can get underway really, really quickly. But again, even then, it still is going to take time. So as umpires, we're going to kind of keep things paced a little bit, at least at the start. But ultimately, yes, if the players want to deploy nuclear weapons or they want to saber rattle, if they want to fly bombers off the coast of, the Carolinas or whatever, or Virginia, we're going to let them do it. So hopefully they work this out somehow. It'll be very interesting to see. I think from a player perspective, if I were playing, I'd be like, I don't know what to do here. And I'm sure the players have a sense of that because the Cuban Missile Crisis really was historically a tremendous dilemma, and it's the closest the planet has come to nuclear annihilation. And putting, people into this simulation should be insightful for everyone. So it'll be fun. It'll be cool to see. All right, let's talk about red versus blue. Marvelous Anarchy says I shouldn't be listening to this, right? You can listen to it because I have that in mind. I figure some of you are going to stumble across this and watch it. That's okay. You're not getting any information here that isn't going to be available to you at the start of the game. So I need a sip of coffee before I start coughing. Marvelous Anarchy is telling us he's the president of the U.S. player. So, and he wants to make it realistic and challenging for himself, which is why he wants to occasionally go and campaign. Well, we will see. We will see what you end up doing. Let me check the stage too, because we got people in there as well. It's good to see you guys who are in the stage. Bertrand, Viper, Kuntz, good to see you guys. All right, let's see here. And all right, let's go ahead and have a look at red versus blue. I need to close that so I can see everything. Achilles says, I bet Leningrad and New York get blown up. Robert says, we can only hope. All right, here we are. All right, red versus blue. The red versus blue campaign has soft started. We've been running the economic turns for November and December, which is the kind of the leavings of 1805. I have processed all of the economic orders for all but I think two of the countries, or maybe even just one. I think there's two countries. Oh yeah, Vermilion still needs to be done, which is kind of an important one, and then Zarkina needs to be done, and I will be doing those today. And I do believe we're going to have a general meeting of the umpires today after this podcast is over, and we're going to talk about some details. And basically, as of Monday, we are beginning the main campaign. Um, so people know what this is. A while back, one of the problems that we had in the early days of the IKS is how people play their games. They go in and they push all their pieces to the middle, as I call it, and they just, they're like, okay, that's the battle. And they fight as if there are no consequences whatsoever. And that's not a particularly realistic way to play the game. And we wanted to create more realism and give players consequences for their choices, especially those choices they make in battle. So if they make a choice to, hey, everybody just charge up the middle, it might win them the battle, but it also depletes their forces. In a pickup game, like on a Saturday battle, where there's no carryover, there's no consequence to do that. You go home, you feel pretty good that, hey, I won the battle, it's all great, right? Now I must be the next Napoleon. No, you're absolutely not, because you're not thinking about the battles to come. So to get people to think about these consequences, we created this red versus blue. It's a fictional universe that is analogous to Napoleonic Europe, but it is different. So, why not just play Europe? Why not play France and Prussia and Austria and England and all of that? Well, we didn't want to get into the politics of it. And this is a traditional Kriegsspiel problem. Anytime you try to replicate history, people are always going to say, but what about this? What about these guys? They had rifles. What about these guys? They had special tactics or whatever. What about these guys? They had the special light infantry, whatever it may be. What about the Scottish soldiers? They were, like really capable soldiers. What about this battery? What about these rockets? Which they had. Um, we don't want to get into all of that, and we certainly don't want to get into the politics. Was Napoleon a dictator? Well, of course, but whatever. We don't want to get into all of that. So we've created our own fictional universe to avoid all of those problems. And that's something I advise people to do whenever you create a Kriegsspiel battle. Never, never, never do the actual history. It's the same thing with our Cuban Missile Crisis. We are, excuse me. We are not doing the exact Cuban Missile Crisis. We are changing certain things. If I can find my mouse, we are changing the order of battle, and we are changing placements and other critical things so that players can't open up Wikipedia and follow a script. Absolutely don't want that, and we don't want players to say, but what about this? The Soviet Union had this going on. What about this? Kennedy had this ready to go. No, we don't want to do that. Again, we don't want scripted games. We want players to solve dilemmas for themselves. And of course, it solves problems for the empires. So we created the fictional red versus blue universe on the continent of Rieswilt, named after uh, George Leopold von Rieswitz, the inventor of Kriegsspiel, in his honor. And we have these cool countries here. Now, my cursor disappears when I move it, or it turns into this little X, so it's hard to see. But this here in the kind of the pink color is vermilion. That's the not France, as we would call it. And then up here in the upper right, you have in blue what we call Blaureich, and that is the Prussia equivalent. So they're basically Prussia, if you will. In the middle in the green, you have Liesen, and they're sort of kind of like a Low Countries equivalent, but they're not such a pushover. Um, then you have in the north, you have Altmark, which is basically our UK England equivalent. In the south, here in the teal color, much bigger than I ever imagined, by the way, we have the Southern Duchy. And I am actually going to advocate for us to redraw some of this map because it's supposed to be a little tiny vassal state of Blaureich, kind of like Switzerland. But here on the map, it's just this big, huge, sprawling state. But again, it's like Switzerland, but kind of dark and evil. It's like if you cross Switzerland with Romania, you get the Southern Duchy. So there you have it. Here in the yellow, we have Dorado, which is like a Spanish equivalent. You know, I'm starting to wonder if I'm wrong about that. I'm maybe here in above the Sea of Hugs is the Southern Duchy. I think I'm wrong. I think the Southern Duchy is the little space that's not colored in above the Sea of Hugs. That makes me feel a lot better if that's the case. And it probably is. Someone will tell me how wrong I am shortly, and that's fine. Down below, you have the Mediterranean and so on. So we actually have a whole world that's being created off this map. There is already a new world, if you will, created called Avalonia, and it's populated by indigenous people, but they have medieval level technology. So they don't have firearms, but they have armor and swords. They have metallurgy. And so they're not going to be a pushover, right? In fact, there's already been contact between the people of Rieswilt and Avalonia, and that contact has happened quite recently, and the implications of that are about to be felt here in the Red versus Blue campaign. What makes this campaign cool is each nation has a leader, and then they have ambassadors, and then they have military commanders, they have admirals. So it's this whole role-playing aspect. And the purpose of the role-playing aspect and the map and everything else is ultimately to facilitate Kriegsspiel battles. Now, because too many battles can be generated too easily, most of the battles will probably be umpire resolved. However, if we have some really cool battles and we have an available date to run them, we will run those battles in real time, which would be absolutely fantastic to do. And it should create some really interesting player-generated outcomes, which ultimately is more desirable than any umpire-generated outcome. All right, let's take a look now at some more comments. Achilles says it will be like fail-safe or something. I think he's referring to the movie or a movie. Um, Robert says, I'll talk to you, Marshall, about Vermilion. Uh-oh. Okay. Achilles says, you can't be wrong, you're the umpire. Well, I assure you, Achilles, I am wrong far more often then I am right. But it's okay to be wrong because if you're wrong, it means you're trying, you're putting in the effort. Um, let's see if there's some other updates I have for you. I can't think of anything in particular. I know I said on the title of the show other updates because I figured that I'm going to think of something and I need to say, oh, but what about this? I'm just trying to stay alive here. I've had such a rough year, so many health issues and everything. But this is really, really mild stuff, and it's going to clear up. I probably have to go to the doctor, and we'll be just fine. So nothing to worry about. Let me see here. Um, we had our map design contest, and there were a couple winners of that map design contest. And we don't have the maps imported into a module as of yet. But we did have two winners of that, so let me mention that. And let me pull up the two winners. Uh, there's, let me see, here it is. Here's the first one. And we'll open that as a, here it is. And this here was sort of our first place winner. And it's basically like Egypt. It's an area in Egypt which provides the model. And it's a desert area. But this was one of our winners, and it will make the very interesting map. For future battles. I apologize. I'm just. What do you do? Um, so the winner here got a sweater and a mug, an IKS hoodie and a mug. And here we are. We're able to blow it up. So you can get a really cool look at it. And I just think this is a beautiful map. It is absolutely beautiful. So I'm really, really pleased and impressed with the quality of workmanship on this map. So that winner, of course, has been rewarded, and I believe they should already have their prize. If not, reach out to me and let me know. The other map, let me get to the other map, needed a little bit more work, but I believe that work was put in. Yep, it looks like it. Here it is. And let me open this. And this is a little more in line with what I requested originally, which is more of a European style map. You have a central river, you have some coastline, you have towns and villages, you have a road network and other things. And there are contour lines. Now, I can't blow this one up. So, unfortunately, I don't think I can give us a closer or more detailed view. If I move that over here, does it? No, that doesn't do it. If I go there, yeah, it's the same. Okay, I figured. But it's still cool to see, and it's really cool to see that the players are doing this work and bringing us this really cool stuff that will enhance future games. And of course, if additional players want to create maps, I would be willing to, send them some consideration for their effort. Again, both of those map makers, our cartographers, were given the prize of an IKS mug of their choice and an IKS hoodie sweater, which is pretty cool. So, neat to have those things. It's a lot of work to do, so they deserve the consideration. All right, I probably need to wrap up because my voice isn't going to hold out. Uh, let's see here. Jeb's Halo campaign New Mombasa recently concluded. That's the first I've heard of it. I've never heard of this until just right now. The cool thing about the IKS is this. Um, I hated umpiring every single Kriegsspiel I was involved in, which was necessary because I was the only person, or I should say, I was one of a tiny, tiny handful of people I knew that could umpire and run a Kriegsspiel. So I basically established the SoCal Kriegsspiel Society, and thanks to COVID and technology, it kind of became the IKS, the International Kriegsspiel Society. It didn't kind of, it did. And my goal was to train and teach other people how to do Kriegsspiel. Why? so I wouldn't have to do it all the time. And I was able to network and connect with cool people like Peter and Dave Pumphouse and just a whole bunch of other people. People who knew Kriegsspiel or had familiarity with it. Even some people who had also run Kriegsspiels from the UK group and such. Um, Network and then create a whole bunch of people who can run Kriegsspiels. And the purpose of all of that was so I could play. And if you look here, there's a Kriegsspiel game going on right now as we speak. Blaze Trail is running a game. He's got, sorry, the headset gave out. He's got Nick, who's been with us since the beginning, in the early days, and Sergey there, who's helping to umpire, and he's got a bunch of players. And here they are. They are playing. And the whole point of the IKS was to create a lot of people like Blaze Trail, so whenever I want to, I can play a game. I don't have to umpire all the time. It was very selfish. But what that's resulted in is this over here. You see this? These are all Kriegspiel servers that I know about, and there's more that I don't even know about, and they just go on and on and on. This whole list here, and plus all of these old ones here that are defunct, that are just old games and other things that I'm not participating in because they're wrapped up, but I've kept them archived. So it just goes on. So I've created a monster. I'm very proud of the monster, and I'm glad that it lives and breathes far beyond me. I'm excited to know that there are even communities out there that I've never even heard of, because ultimately that means in the future, whenever I want to wander in and play a game somewhere, I can do it. I can even do it under a different name, and people won't know who the heck I am or anything, and they won't try to make me empire. They'll just let me play. So that's mission accomplished, I say. Anyway, I want to thank you all for being here. We're at the end of our time anyway. I hope these updates were insightful and exciting to you. October 29th at 8 a.m. Pacific, we're going to play, that's this next Saturday, we're going to play our special Halloween Cuban Missile Crisis Anniversary game. And we've got a lot of cool stuff in the Red versus Blue campaign coming up. And we just, in general, have a lot of really cool events. Pickup games, as you just saw, are happening right now. We have play-by-post campaigns. We've wrapped up a few big ones, like the D-Day campaign. But I assure you, we're about to start a whole mess of other ones because these guys, they can't resist. Neither can I. So there you have it. Thank you all for being here. It was good to see all of you, and we will see you